What is going on, everybody? This is iNcontroL doing another iNcontroL Talks. This time we're going to be talking about Legacy of the Void, the big changes, both in general, Zerg, Terran, and Protoss. But also, you know, I had some hands-on experience with it, and I want to kind of talk about the progression of the direction where the game's going, and just really just kind of delve into the Legacy of the Void topic, as it seems, with this past Blizzcon. And I say past because literally today I got back from it, so I guess I can say that. It looks like it's coming up a little bit faster than we thought. Leading up to this BlizzCon, there were no announcements of due dates for Legacy of the Void. There were no teasers, nothing. Blizzard is always really good at surprising us and showing off some cool stuff, so they saved it. They saved it for BlizzCon, and here it is. And again, there is no due date, so for those of you that are perhaps outside of the circle, the loop, I do not have a due date to give to you. What I can tell you is that because they've shown it at BlizzCon, and because they did have a playable demo, albeit, you know, pre-beta, it's within reason to say that you can expect it in 2015. I feel like anywhere between mid and late 2015 is a target place where you could expect to see Legacy of the Void drop. And I guess for the novices out there that aren't as well informed in the game, it's going to be a standalone game. You do not have to purchase Wings of Liberty and Heart of the Swarm. You can buy it by itself. It's going to be the conclusion to the three-part series, so perhaps you'll want to go back and buy those other editions that are now being sold for far and away cheaper. You can find them for $20 at Best Buy at various different offers, that kind of stuff like that. But you know, if you do want to go back and pick them up, be a smart shopper about it, because you can get them fairly cheap. So yeah, let's just dive right into it. I've got some notes here. I'm going to kind of go line by line and discuss each of them, and then I'm going to kind of conclude with a little bit of a discussion, if you will, on Blizzard moving forward with Legacy of the Void. And you know, one of the big subjects that a lot of people talk about is viewership and what does the game need to change to reinvigorate itself and that kind of a thing. So we're going to get into a little bit of an opinionated talk, but you know, hopefully that's part of the reason why you're here, is sometimes to talk out of my butt with a little bit of my experience in there. So hopefully you guys will enjoy. Generally starting, so one of the big changes, they're going to be actually changing the economy of Starcraft II. It's always been 6 workers. I had to think about that, because anytime there's like a specific number, I get really worried that I say the wrong one and look like an idiot. Anyways, it's been a lot smaller economy, 1,500 minerals per mineral patch, and what that ended up doing was a lot of times you got 3 base economy, and that was all you needed. Anything beyond that, and you actually had either too many harvesters if you fully saturated them. Well, there's no either, I guess. That was the big downside. So it was like kind of just maintaining 3 base economy, whereas if you go back to Brood War, you were rewarded for the more bases that you had because you actually didn't need that many harvesters at each base. Full saturation was far and away a lot less. They mined not more efficiently, but very quick. So now it's going to go up to 12. And what this does is it's going to change a lot of things. A lot of the early game where things aren't really developing, everyone's kind of making their 7th, 8th, and 9th, and 10th harvester. Oh, look at this, he left his base, he's going to go do something. But even that comes, you know, if not immediately, then maybe 30, 40, well, not 30 or 40, but several moments later. Starting with 12 harvesters, it's going to speed that up. You're going to jump right into meaningful decisions. It's going to be very nice that way. But kind of well, maybe subtle to the observer, but really cool for all of us involved, is dropping the mineral piles down to 1,000 per patch as opposed to 1,500. That means bases are going to mine out a lot quicker. That means they're going to be mined out a lot faster as well, starting with more harvesters. So it's going to speed up the game in almost every single way. And what I like about this is that means that, again, it kind of puts emphasis on a part of the game that's always been emphasized, and that is, of course, the economy, but it's going to re-emphasize. It's going to make it more of a focus. Your bases are going to mine out faster. You're going to be able to saturate them quicker. So what this all kind of, the little ripples it kind of sends throughout the game is you can kind of jumpstart into the harass phase. You can start doing the building the army. The not more meaningful, but perhaps the more exciting portions of the game. And I feel like by kind of jumpstarting the early stage with having 12 harvesters and less to mine inside your bases, you're going to see more impactful, faster, and intense games. And that's going to be a theme you're going to hear me repeat, because it's something that Blizzard was very outspoken about saying. They want to show off a higher skill gap. So I'm going to try not to get too far off topic, but this first one is a big one. Moving down, as far as general is concerned, that's just about it. Actually, I was reading the rest of this, and it doesn't seem like there's story stuff, but I'm not too concerned with talking about that here, because there's someone far and away better to talk about that. I have very little experience with the campaign, and to be honest, I don't really care. It's cool for people. A couple of things, speculation that I'll put out here. Michael Carmack, actually his last name's not Carmack, Michael Bilshez, or I'm not. You know what? It's Carmack, the ESL guy. Okay, the really funny, awesome guy who's a big hand in esports. He actually interviewed Kim Fan in the round of 16 for WCS, and asked her point blank, free to play. She, of course, very rightfully so, identified herself as not the person to answer that question, and I do not believe it was answered at BlizzCon. But that's something that I personally would like to interject that I think would be good. Free to play multiplayer. I think people should pay the full price, of course, for the game. But then there should be the option to have free-to-play multiplayer. And what that can do is, obviously, if people enjoy the multiplayer as kind of a gateway into Starcraft II, they can be like, well, I'm going to go check out the campaign. That's really interesting to me. I'm hearing good things. And then they turn around and buy that. Or if they don't do that, then they can just get hooked on the multiplayer and become a part of the arcade, which is one of the absolute best features of Starcraft II, is the incredible depth of their arcade. And if you get that player base larger, there's more people viewing. And then there's, of course, more people buying the game. At least that's the thought. But it's proven to work pretty well for Riot and Valve with League of Legends and Dota 2, of course. So let's get into some more changes here for Terran. A lot of big changes here. One of the big ones right off the bat is tanks can now be picked up in siege mode. Some people are speculating this is going to be kind of like a Reaver-esque move. I talked to Scarlett. She was talking about how this is going to make them more viable in TVZ, so that instead of just having them, the second Zerglings get a surround or Banelings come over there, they just die. You can now, of course, pick them up and relocate them to other places. And then in TVP, they're going to be more viable as well. Because, again, one of the biggest weaknesses of a tank was that if anything got into melee range of it, it was just toast, or friendly fire would kill it. Still, friendly fire exists, but you're going to have more micro options. And again, look for this theme throughout these changes, because this is something that I give a huge nod to Blizzard for. If you don't pick up the tank, it dies, as per usual. But if you have the multitask and the attention to detail to pick it up and put it to a safer location and use it more efficiently, we're going to start seeing some incredible things. You know, of course, speaking from the top end down. But even at the lower level, players are going to feel more rewarded when they make a fairly simple executable decision, but it looks really cool, and it ends up, you know, having an impact on the game, saving that fairly expensive and high damage dealing unit, the tank. So I am hugely in support of the decision. I think it's awesome. Thor's capable of self-repair. What I like about this is that the Thor doesn't just passively self-repair, like as it takes damage, it doesn't then just all of a sudden start repairing, which I think is really bad, and is a theme that has been in games, even Starcraft II in the past, where you are rewarded for the decision to build something. That's it. It just automatically does things like that. The more you can make it manual in something that you have to make a critical choice to do, the more skill will be shown, but the greater depth to the game as well. And I like this one a lot. They showed in the video, you can actually see that as well. You can just go to battle.net and check out a lot of these videos, I believe, or just Google it. But it kind of hunkers down and starts glowing and irradiating. And it repairs at a pretty decent clip, but not like, you know, it's taking damage and actively out-repairing the damage input coming in, unless it's like a drone or something. But again, just a big, nice one there. Thors are really expensive. They're super units. They should have something like this. It's kind of reminiscent of the Mammoth tank from Command & Conquer and Red Alert. Justin Browder, I wonder. Banshees get a range increase and are going to have a movement buff. This one seems like something that we could or could not see as the game releases. That's something that I will unfortunately scapegoat quite a few times, because this is, again, one of the first glances we've seen at the game. And it's, you know, this is the first time a mass group of people have played it. Banshees are already really good. They already have incredible damage output, and they can be microed very well. We've seen this all the way back to the very first GSLs. Do they need this buff? Do they need the range buff? Because they already have great range and great speed? I don't know. I don't necessarily think so. A lot of people think Terran are... Well, I'm not going to try to spend too much time on this, but a lot of people think Terran are underpowered or overpowered, whatever. It's all over the place. For me personally, this is an interesting one. It's not game-breaking. I'm okay with seeing more Banshees. They already have weaknesses. They're fairly gentle in terms of health. They can be feedbacked. They don't have any anti-air. So it's not like improving the Banshee is all of a sudden people make 45 Banshees just win every game. That's not the way it works. So I'm okay with them working on this. I like this one. This one's really interesting to me. I say that without having played against it, though, so we'll see. Battlecruisers are going to have the ability to warp anywhere that you have vision of. Now, in conjunction with scan, that's pretty baloney. Like, you could have 9 battlecruisers scan this soft underbelly of your opponent, boop, teleport over there, and then all of a sudden you're dealing massive amounts of damage. Of course, the big question is, like, what kind of cooldown is the warp going to end up having once it is implemented? You know, I think they actually take did it say? I think they said it takes 200% more damage as it's warping as well, much like the Protoss warping, which we'll get to in a second in the Protoss section. I just kind of like this. I like the application of this. I miss the Arbiter from Brood War in its recall ability. You guys might understand that word to be like with the Mothership Core, but it was very different. It was much more offensive with the Arbiter. You actually recalled to the Arbiter as opposed to a Nexus. So there's a lot of cool strategies like hallucinating multiple Arbiters, running through a missile turret line, and then recalling your army into that spot with one of the 2 or 3 real Arbiters. It was just really cool. This is kind of reminiscent of that. Of course, the battlecruiser can't grab anything else and teleport there. But just a cool fleet of battlecruisers warping in and doing something. I don't know. It's call me a sci-fi junkie, but that's in all the kinds of movies and shows. It's very Battlestar Galactica, and I like it. So we'll see how it gets implemented. I'm okay with that one. Let's talk about the new units. The first one's the Cyclone. I'm going to spend very little time on this. If you haven't seen it, well, no, that's not true. I'm not going to spend very little time on anything. I'm very long-winded. I like it. I like the Cyclone in theory. I like the idea of a Vulture-esque unit. Vulture, of course, being the Brood War. I don't want to call it prerequisite because they're very different. The Vulture is like a hover bike that shot canister grenades, and the Cyclone is just a generic buggy thing that shoots missiles. What I don't like about the Cyclone is that there's absolutely no drawbacks. It does huge amounts of damage. It hits air and it hits ground. It has high range, and it auto-shoots like a Phoenix. Any one of those things is a fantastic quality. The fact that it has all of them fairly inexpensively and earlier on in the game, it's too much. So the reason I started by saying I'm not going to spend too much time on this is that this will absolutely change. There's no like bitterness or anger or rant to be had at Blizzard. I like that they're actually going more towards the overpowered side of things as opposed to like super domesticated and gentle units that come out and then we're like, oh wow, I'm kind of excited about that. No, I want you to start up here and then let's tone it down to mid-range where we're still excited about it, but it perhaps functions better in the game. So I like this unit. I hope they tinker with it. I liked the Vulture in Starcraft Brood War. It's one of the coolest things out there. It also could outrun everybody. It also could almost move and shoot, but you had to micro it really well. So I'd like to see more something like that from the Cyclone as opposed to it just auto-shoots and you just have to kite around like the Phoenix. I think that was the old school thought, moving towards the easier direction. I want us to move more towards, like the rest of these changes have been, towards the harder direction. Make the player manually move and shoot with that, and then reward them for their skill. The next new unit is the Herc, which I assume is short for Hercules. I am absolutely in love with this unit. I think it's one of the coolest things Blizzard's done with Starcraft II. That's like super high praise, but I'm actually that in love with it. First of all, it's so different from everything else. Terran, there's, did they need just another shooty thing that just joins into the mass and you put it under one hotkey and it just auto interacts with everything? No. I think that's silly. I like the idea of the Herc being something so incredibly different. It jumps up into the target's face, becomes the primary focus of that unit just in terms of the AI, and then it's built for that. It has a tanky ability, has a short range, high explosive damage. Its early gamifications are fantastic. I like it for its harass, its scout. I don't know what it will do in late games. Of course, nobody does. We have to test all these things out. But I really like how different that is from everything else. And it's not different like a Reaper is, where it has absolutely no place in the late game. And the Reaper only exists in the early game. Anything after that is like a troll game, or you're making fun of your opponent, or you're making a bad choice. I like the idea of this unit hopefully scaling well, and grabbing the attention of Colossus and really sucking in their otherwise AoE long range damage so that they can be focused down, or getting in on those lurkers or swarm hosts and jumping in on the units that otherwise want to use their range to keep their opponents at bay. Stuff like that gets me all kinds of excited. So that's the Terran changes. Protoss changes. I'm going to try to move through these because I'm told that on YouTube you have to be very quick on the videos. So I'm trying to do that for you guys. Protoss, of course, is near and dear to my heart. Some of these changes have me goosebumping up and down the butt crack. Okay, so first off, we have the Warp Prism. This is excellent. They increase the range for which it can load and unload. The micro potential here is phenomenal. There's a lot of people that are worried that this might be broken. If it is broken, it's skill-based broken, which is, again, something that I want this game to move in the direction of, and Blizzard seems to agree with me. In fact, it almost sounds like I'm taking credit for that. Let's not. Blizzard's moving in the excellent direction, and again, I'll talk about that in the wrap-up. Of course, that makes the Warp Prism much more powerful, but in my opinion, with that power comes excitement. Very interesting implications to be used with this. So very simply put, that's what it does. But I like the idea of, there's going to be all kinds of things like pre-moving the warp prism to a new location to then suck in those 3 or 4 units and drop them over here. And to give you guys an idea on the range, by the way, it's roughly the distance of like a town hall structure. It's actually quite long, and I was playing with it pretty extensively at BlizzCon, and I love the idea of this. Of course, Immortal Drops is, I'm on record as saying it's one of my favorite things. The new Disruptor, we'll talk about that in a second. Colossus drops, just all kinds of implications. It's absolutely awesome. Of course, one of the most powerful abilities of the Warp Prism is just the ability to warp in, dozens of units from off your gateways. That doesn't get affected by this, but the specific, several unit harass function of the Warp Prism all of a sudden has greater utility, which opens up the doors towards better harass, which is something that Protoss needed. Moving forward, the Tempest only attacks ground units and receives a speed buff. I did not notice that it only attacks ground units. I wonder if that's going to be true. I feel like the Tempest still has to hit air. The carrier is, I guess, and I'll talk about that in a second, perhaps what's going to try to fill that role. We'll see. I worked with the disintegration ability. I didn't understand it. It might have been bugging for me a little bit. It felt like when I hit a building, 500 damage was not that much at all. Even though if you look at the overall health of a building, it's roughly, 1,500, 2,500. Like it's somewhere in that department between if Protoss shields and actual building integrity, or just straight health of a Zerg structure or a Terran building. It did not grab me as anything super amazing. It takes a full 50 seconds, almost a minute, for the damage to happen over time. It still happens at the full range, so I could see some pretty interesting, cool snipes. Like picking off an infestor, picking off a swarm host, picking off vipers, that kind of stuff. And then there's actually, because it happens over time, it's kind of cool because they could then go back and heal those units through either medevacs, if you're trying to pick off a ghost or something like that, or if you're Zerg, you can use transfuses. So there's a desperation, it forces micro on your opponent, or they just lose that thing. That concept I'm pretty excited about. I immediately thought of it as a structure harassing thing. I don't think so. I think it's much... I didn't see if it's stacked. I tried to make it stack. I don't think it does, but again, I'm not the best scientist in the entire world, so perhaps it does, and I just wasn't able to show that to myself. Carriers get a speed increase, interceptors come free, and when the carrier dies, the interceptors stick around. So in general, they're just trying to really emphasize the carrier, and this is a unit that they almost actually took away in Heart of the Swarm, keep in mind. But a lot of the players, myself included, jumped on the forums and our various soapboxes were like, no, keep the carrier. That's one of the most iconic things in all of Starcraft II. They, of course, did. Now they're going to give it some extra attention. The carrier is very powerful. We're seeing more and more use from the carrier in all the way, up to the very top matches. And then, I don't know about lower matches, but, at my level, GM or whatever, we're seeing a lot of carriers. Well, when I say a lot, I guess a lot more, not every single game or something like that. So I think this is cool. I don't think anyone's worried this is going to be broken. I think it's going to be very powerful. My concern is that the carrier is kind of a gigantic A-move unit right now. It's really hard to focus fire things with carriers like you could in Brood War and Micro and kite them back, which was just a beautiful display of skill. If they can make that happen in Starcraft II, then I'm super on board with this. But if it's just the carrier's better and it's faster and the interceptors are free, so it's just generally better, then this is just going to be a late game. I have 16 carriers, I support it with a mothership, and I A-move towards you. And hopefully you got something, which I'm not for, of course. We need to move away from that direction. Some other things. Okay, so warping, this is a big change. A lot of people have been having problems with that. Warping will now take 8 seconds, and units that are getting warped in take 200% damage. I agree with this 1,000-fold. I think this is fantastic. There should be some risk when you warp into harm's way, other than, they have a potential jump start to start attacking that unit. I like the idea of being punished for warping into a bad spot or an overly aggressive spot, or an aggressive spot in general. I saw the 8 seconds myself. It changes things for sure, but it was not game-breaking at all. I think 8 seconds is very fair. It's something like a 4 or 5 second increase, I believe, maybe a little bit less. It did not feel globally horrific. It was fine. It was absolutely fine. I think this is moving in the right direction. As far as justification for this goes, it's not like Protoss won absolutely everything and needs this just gigantic nerf. I don't feel like this is a gigantic nerf. I feel like this is again rewarding more cautious play, and it's going to force the Protoss players to put a little bit more thought into what they're doing. And then, of course, if opponents have the foresight to target down or take advantage of an overly aggressive Protoss, they should be rewarded for that. So I think this is all good. Oracle now has the Revelation spell and Detecting spell combined. That's interesting. Don't have any huge complaint about that. It again makes it more of a skill shot as opposed to just a passive. I now see things in this range. I detect. It now is like, you sprinkle the fairy dust and that's what is detected. So I'm for it. I like that. I always felt like oracles could detect and then go on cooldown and then detect again too fast. Their regeneration made it seem like they're just constant detectors, which was just a little bit too good for what they did. So I'm more in favor of this spot's detected. Oh crap, there's another thing that I need to detect. Well, I have to have something else other than just the one oracle. So I think that's fine. I did get to work around with its stasis field mine. I thought this was interesting. It didn't blow me away. What I like about it is the idea of the oracle having its still primary function as something that harasses. But, in pro games now, once it's done harassing, it does the fairy dust thing. And a lot of times, you don't see it. It actually just disappears or dies because it just overly harasses. And then they remake it at minute 35 for its revelation ability and for its fairy dust. That's what I call it. Hopefully you guys know what I'm talking about. But with this ability, there's going to be potential for strategies like having 3 or 4 oracles over time, because the mine is energy based, and as far as I could tell, it doesn't have a cooldown. It doesn't detonate the mine itself. So if you have 3 or 4 oracles over time, you could just lay infinity mines, and the mines are pretty powerful. They're pretty cool. They don't do damage, and things caught within the stasis field of the mine itself don't take damage as well. So its application's not overly powerful. It's not something we're going to be seeing rocking the battlefields like the oracle's the new thing. Oh my god, no, it's not going to be like that. But there's going to be cool applications for, like, slowing down opponents as they chase your army, slowing down worker fields perhaps, freezing up. It's like an offensive force field, freezing up half of an army as you engage the other half. Those kind of applications I'm pretty excited about. It doesn't just plop the mine down, it actually takes a minute to kind of focus it down, so you can't... I don't see it being used mid-battle too much. I do see it being used to manipulate a battlefield before the armies actually arrive there. So, pretty cool. Not super amazing, but pretty cool. And then we have the final 2 things. The Immortal Shield now has a manual. It doesn't have the passive hardened shield. It instead has a manual option. Well, not option, ability, where for 4 seconds it's indestructible or invincible. I like this. I think this is awesome. This is, again, you can see Blizzard conscientiously moving away from just, I made this thing and this is what it does good, into, I made this thing, it does these things well, but I need to control it to make it do these things very well. And that, again, is going to show really cool micro options, like which one's getting the shield at what time. The fact that it's actually just flat out invulnerable means that it's not just useful against tanks, like it used to be. It's going to be like, well, actually I have 15 immortals, and you almost killed them, and then boom, in the last second they all hit their shields, and for 4 seconds they're dealing 2 rounds of volleys at you, and you're just taking it in the teeth. I think there's going to be some really exciting applications of this. There's, a mine, whoop, goes to hit it, activate the shield, it negates the whole damage. Like, there's going to be some freaking cool uses of this, and if I had more thumbs to give, I would. I think this is one of the most exciting yet subtle changes that's going to really reward creative and intelligent, but also fast play, which is what Starcraft should do. Really excited about that. Let's talk about the new unit, Disruptor. Meh. Really, I'm honestly pretty meh about it. It's a 300 gas unit coming off the Robo. It looks like a fairy contained in a water bowl with weird Protoss-y, like, disc orbs that travel it. I like the sounds it makes. The graphics for it are really cool. It's a beautiful unit. It's not particularly scary. It's not really calling to any, Aztecan lineage or anything like that. Yeah, whatever. Okay, so we're not going to be too critical about the art direction of it. I guess where I find this to be incredibly meh is it's another AoE unit. It's got low health, 100 health, and 100 shields, and its thing is that it just kind of rolls around, and it's on a cooldown. And when you initiate it, it doubles its speed, it becomes invulnerable again for 4 seconds, runs forward, and then does an AoE splash explosion. but it itself doesn't explode. It just detonates this, like, think of it as like an electromagnetic pulse type thing. It does roughly, like, I think 150 damage, something like that, which is 2 storms, as someone pointed out earlier. So yeah, it's like, the applications would be I can throw it in a harvester field and I can crack some stuff there. I can run it into a Zerg death ball in the middle of a fight, and now they have to panic because they're about to get exploded, which is cool. But Protoss already has so much AoE. They already have the Colossus and Templar. I see the Disruptors being added as just insane. Just the same thing, annihilating stuff. What I do like about it is, of course, the weaknesses. It's low in health, right? And it has to be triggered to actually do anything. It doesn't just run forward invincibly and go blow things up. You actually have to tell it to do that. Okay. It's very expensive, so if you're not using it appropriately, you're going to lose it. I don't believe it hits air. I don't think the AoE does. It might. So don't take my word as the gospel truth on that, but I don't think it does. Its damage affects buildings. It's okay. But like I said, that's where the meh word comes in. I'm not super excited about it. I see Protoss Death Balls being exactly the same, maybe with some Oracle support. Carriers are the big late game thing, and then Disruptors will have like a harass function, or people are going to have like 6 to 8 Disruptors on a separate hotkey. We'll have the big fight, and then, oh, it's super exciting! Here come the Disruptors! And what is the Zerg supposed to do? They don't have force fields. I guess they could fungal it. Hopefully fungal affects it. And if they do, that's cool. That shuts it down. But if they don't have those things, they run in there and they annihilate the Zerg army. They blow it up. Because they don't take damage. It's not that they take half. It's not that they don't take explosive or, whatever. They don't take damage. So it's not super hard for the Protoss just to grab 6 to 8 of these things late game, run them in, blow up. And the Zerg's options are have fungal, or run away and take free damage from the entire Protoss army. And oh, by the way, running away from Disruptors is not guaranteed. Force fields, stasis fields. The Disruptor itself moves incredibly fast. So these are some of the problems I'm looking at, and I'm not excited about a game where, once again, Protoss is an army that you basically just have to pick apart, otherwise you die. I think it should be more of a skill-based game where there's a lot of cool synergy moments in time happening in there, and if they all function together really well, then yeah, you're screwed. But if it's just like, I made Disruptors. Oh, you're dead. Not super excited about that. So we'll see if I'm wrong. I could be completely wrong, but that's kind of my first glance. Now, finally, Zerg. Let's talk about that. Nidus Worm now invisible while burrowing, and invulnerable while emerging. Great. There's some questions about this, of course. If it's not an upgrade, if just in general Nidus Worms are just invisible while this happens, the mid-game of Zerg is going to be very scary. Okay, that's fine. You should scout around your base anyways, and if you're doing a Nidus Worm tactic, that's really cool, but it comes with some risk as well, of course. Nidus Worms aren't the cheapest things, and usually you're making a lot of offensive units to do that. If your economy is not fully set up, or you get counterattacked, there's pros and cons here. The idea of having more Nidus Worms in Starcraft II is more exciting and better. So if we buff them and make them more viable, then this is a good thing as far as I'm concerned. I don't think this breaks the game. I think this makes it scarier for your Terran and Protoss opponents, even Zerg, and I think that it should be. So I'm all aboard with this. There's an upgrade that make Locusts go up in the air. As far as I was told, I did not play around with this. They don't attack air units. It's just that they can avoid ground-based damage. And the Swarm Host does not burrow. And the Swarm Host has a much longer cooldown time to launch its Locusts, and then they're manually launched. So all those changes are pretty severe. That makes them pretty insanely. There's a huge risk. They don't burrow, so you can always find them. You can kill them. And then there's another upgrade involved. Well, actually, I think they come with a range upgrade now. So never mind. There's just still the one upgrade to make their Locusts fly, and they're not overpowered because they don't hit air. So this is a okay direction. What I'm worried with, and I have this paired with it, is the Lurker. The Lurker's exciting. Guys, I made a life off of Lurkers, okay? I used to be a Zerg player in Brood War. This was my bread and butter, this and the Ultralisk. I love the Lurker. I love that you can dodge it. I love that it's powerful. I love the animation of it. I love the effect it has on clumped up units, so it encourages micro. It has vulnerabilities as well. It's a lot like the Swarm Host, only it's what the Swarm Host should have been, which is, it's limited in its role. You actually have to put it in harm's way to do something, as opposed to just safely keeping it a million miles away and it just does damage automatically for you. Everything about it's great, but the two of them in conjunction is, you know, spines coming at you, or spine lurkers protecting swarm hosts doing the same thing. And then you build spore crawlers and spine crawlers, vipers and infestors. And now it's like you don't even, it's just ridiculous. And it's not, all the Zerg's doing is they're controlling like their corruptor, infestor, viper clump, and then they're, I guess, manually triggering locusts that now fly. Is that the direction we want to go as Zerg? I don't know. Maybe this is me being Chicken Little and calling the sky falling when it's never going to. I hope I'm wrong. But look for that to be something as a point of contention that we should perhaps not want, because we don't want infinite free units invincibly protected by auto-triggering range 9, you know, lurkers. And then we have the Ravager, which is going to be a Roach upgrade. Oh, by the way, the Lurker, not to gloss over too much, it's a Hydra upgrade, and they combine the range and speed upgrades into one, and then there's another upgrade to make them into Lurkers. This is just very similar to Brood War. Brood War had two upgrades, actually, range and speed, but they're combining it in Starcraft II. I'm just generally really excited about it. Like I said, it encourages more micro. The Zerg puts themselves in harm's way, but they do excellent damage. It's all about protecting the Lurkers. How are you going to go about doing that? You need to scout to know what you're protecting against. This raises the bar. I'm glad with it. Ravagers. Ravagers have a AoE skill shot that it can affect air and crush force fields. It's very hard to land, but if timed properly with like infestors, this is something that could be fantastic and really good. I like that a lot. I like the idea of landing a skill shot. I like the idea of a Zerg predicting where perhaps their opponent's going to move and then dropping devastating damage on that spot, or zoning them out. Everything about this I like. I like that it costs money to upgrade them. I like that, you know, once you it's not like a Roach upgrade that you get and then globally everything turns into a Ravager. There's very specific cost to this. It gives the Roach more of a role in the mid and late game, as opposed to just a unit you throw carelessly around and hope that it actually does something. Everything about this is good. I'm super excited about it. And then there's Corruptors. This one I'm pretty concerned. Corruptors are already super boring units. They're tanky, slow-moving, purely anti-air units. They had a spell that people use as an afterthought after they're done killing everything in the air, which is too bad. It's a great spell. And now they're giving it like this acid pour thing that just devastates anything. It doesn't just hit buildings. You know, in the video they show 3 of them dropping a Nexus in roughly 10 seconds. They also show 1 dropping a tank in like 5 seconds. It does devastating damage to all things on the ground, and the Corruptor is a very boring, silly unit. So now that you're giving it universal utility on some level, I don't know if it can hit air with that ability. I don't think it can. But the idea that you can, you know, not just harass buildings, but actually nuke them, essentially, it's insane. What 9 or 10 Corruptors are going to do is going to be ridiculous. And I see a lot of games just getting solved immediately, because it's like, well, they made 20 Corruptors, and as a Protoss player, you know, I do have Stalkers, but they have to also be out on the map. They counterattacked with their Corruptors, and they actually just dropped my base in 2 seconds flat. And my options were either to have those Stalkers that I talked about, or to also have 15 Void Rays, or something. Because you can storm Corruptors, they don't give a damn. Photon Overcharge now only hits ground units, but even if it didn't, they don't give a damn about that. Phoenix tickle them. It's just silly. And if you have something like Tempest or Carriers in the area, well, that's what Corruptors were made to hunt, actually. So yeah, they're good against Corruptors, but Corruptors are also good against them. So all of a sudden you're left with, well, I could have Archons, I can have Stalkers, and I can storm them. And that's it. Or Void Rays, excuse me, as all viable options for that. But now you're getting very limited. So if you don't have those things, and they just made Corruptors, which are also essential and very good against Colossus, Carriers, Tempest, Motherships, the things Protoss absolutely have to have, all of a sudden you're getting an unequal, it's not even trade's not the right word, it's a force composition. Zergs should always make Corruptors against Protoss now. There's no risk to not making Corruptors. There used to be risk. If you made too many Corruptors for my 5 Colossus, you killed all of them, and now I'm making Immortals and everything else, but not Colossus. Now those Corruptors are supply dense, they're inefficient, and they're silly. They're bad. They use their silly spell, which, you know, is okay, but not for their cost and their supply. Now by giving them this other ability, there's no risk. If I'm a Zerg player, I'm like, well, I open up Roachling. I added Hydras. Okay, this is cool. You know what? He's making Colossus. Let's make 25 Corruptors and say, go to hell. You're never going to get those Colossus to do anything. And then after they're dead, the Corruptors can just go kill their base forever. Because if they do make Immortals, and they don't make Void Rays and Templar and Archons, then their base dies. You're going to see counterattacks with Corruptors only, while the Protoss is fighting for their life against the rest of the Zerg out on the map. This I'm really worried about. So we'll see if they should tinker with this. If I was going to make my sick call of the day, I'd tell you that this is broken and is going to be changed and is bad. The Infestor, this is the last change to Zerg. It has an aggressive mutation. It's an AoE spell that's just a buff. It gives them a flat +5 damage to whatever they're doing. Excellent. Fantastic. More utility for the Infestor. You're really going to feel that extra 5 damage, especially if it's on like Infested Terrans or something that shoots fast. Hydraless clumps with +5 damage are going to be disgusting. But it's again that synergy. You don't just passively get that. You have to make Infestors, and then you have to have the Infestors target them with that energy. All of that means that the better players are going to see better results, and I think that's good. Which is a great segue. So that's the 3 races. We talked about the general. To wrap this video up, I just want to say, in general, having very briefly spoken with David Kim, seeing Siggety there, Kim Fan, and just being at BlizzCon, playing with this game, and interacting with the other pros, and seeing, talking to people there, the general consensus is really excited. The big changes are cool. This is going to shake up the game. It's going to make it different in so many different ways and fun and fresh. The units in the game, fantastic for the most part. Protoss only getting 1's a little bit disappointing. Hopefully they'll do something to bring back the Reaver. We could use a couple more cool things. My own pinch of like flavor salt would be I want something super badass. I love when an Immortal shoots the crap out of something. It's like a monstrous cool thing. The Disruptor is like this weird, like Halo-esque disappointing final boss. It's like, I am a fairy. Okay, who cares? That's just a minor complaint, though. But the direction the game's moving is we're going to see better players have more things to do and control, and to be forced to show off their skill at a higher level. If this game was just generally getting harder and more difficult, I would be concerned, because I think that you still have to care to the more casual and friendly player base, but I think they're doing things that are going to be great for that. Daily tournaments. What were some of the other changes? There's daily tournaments. The Archon mode is going to be awesome. It's going to help with ladder anxiety for people. They're going to be able to play the game with a friend and share the blame, but perhaps just have a more fun experience. It's a lot like a 2 versus 2, only you're both controlling the same thing. So there's all kinds of cool combos to be had there, and uniqueness. And then, of course, the fact that the game is a standalone game means it's more affordable, which is just initially always going to be better for that casual base, because they don't want to spend $200 to maybe play a game that they find out is too difficult for them and they don't want to play. So all of these changes are really exciting and good. I want to see more portraits. I want to see them doing that like almost on a weekly basis. I think that's something they could really do. One of the people asked the panel if they're going to do skins. It's really hard for them to implement because there's so many people playing so many different games with a BattleNet that's not necessarily geared towards different skins. Well, that's true or not, as I say that, because they've actually added hats for celebration, stuff like that. We'll see. But more portraits, daily tournaments or weekly tournaments, Archon mode, just kind of more things towards making it friendlier towards the casual base, while at the same time increasing the difficulty at the top end with having more micro-oriented, skill-based units in the game and not taking too many out. That's one thing you'll notice. They didn't talk about taking any units out. They're only talking about adding units, which, again, is moving in the right direction. So my overall impression of Legacy of the Void so far is Blizzard is kicking butt. They're going in the right direction. I'm really excited about this. The only disappointment I have is that I still think it's like 6 or 7 months away from being in our hands, which means a lot of the Heart of the Swarm is going to be like, you're going to be 1 foot in, 1 foot out. You're going to be like, okay, this is fun. I still like Heart of the Swarm, but when's Legacy of the Void? We're back kind of into that period of time. But guys, BlizzCon had over 200,000 people on stream. ESPN was tweeting it out. It was on ESPN3. I think they did an amazing job. Yes, there was a bunch of production issues. But it was an event we can be proud of, and these changes are awesome. They're exciting. The single-player game actually kind of piqued my interest a little bit too, which I know sounds super condescending, but that's just because I didn't play the single players. But from what I saw, I liked it. Maybe I'll check it out too. So I'm just excited. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. If you have questions, I'll try to interact more. I was advised to stay away from YouTube from a lot of the YouTube comments because it can make you want to kill yourself. But you guys have been super supportive and awesome. And on this one in particular, there's going to be a lot of give and take and talking, so I'll try to interact more down there. Hopefully you guys enjoy it, and I will talk to you guys soon. All right, take it easy.